So
Good morning.
Donald Kelly is on a mission to evangelize the methods of effective selling and motivate sellers of all levels to do big things. As a former top performing technology sales professional who has successfully sold in both the public and private sectors, Donald was able to crack the code of helping teams thrive in B2B sales. Donald has been recognized by Salesforce as a 2022 top sales influencer and by LinkedIn as a top 22 sales insider. He's also the author of Sell It Like a Mango, a new seller's guide to closing more deals. And he's the co-author of the two coursewares you just saw, Professional Selling, a guide for the modern sales professional, and Advanced Selling and Sales Management. Donald has designed his training around concrete fundamental principles adaptable by any seller. He has also helped sellers from companies all over the world build confidence in their selling abilities and increase revenue as a result. Donald spends a lot of his time assisting universities and nonprofit firms. Welcome, Donald.
Well, I'm excited to be here, Paul. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And for all of you who are here, we appreciate you being here and coming to get this education. I was in on the last session and I was just sitting there like frivolously writing down my notes. So there's a lot of great insights you're getting here. So I'm looking forward to continue on that today and to get you all excited to possibly check out our courseware as well.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, Donald, and then when you're finished, I'll hop back on and we'll do a Q&A.
All right. So I like getting down and dirty. We're going to get an opportunity to go ahead and I'm going to share some slides. They're very light, but I'm going to take this off the reservation and Stukent may not invite me back to another one, but I'm going to show you some real life situation because we can talk about theories and we can talk about some of those things, but if I can run some motions and show you what works and why these works, it'll be very helpful. Now, for some of you who get a chance to learn about me, you heard my bio there that Paul read and I'm going to give you some money there, Paul, for that wonderful bio. Thank you. And the key though I want to go back in on is the experience as a sales professional when I was carrying the bag, carrying the quota. And from my experience as a brand new individual, leaving college, going out into the business world, we want to make sure when we did this courseware, we want to create something that's going to be a training program. On a day-to-day level, I work with sales team across the globe. And the biggest components that we find is that people want actionable things that they can utilize. So with this presentation today, I want to be able to show you some of the things that I feel as an adjunct professor. I teach one class for my alma mater at Brigham Young University, Idaho, every semester. And we have a new class right now of 30 some odd students. And every semester, the biggest thing that I want to do is give them things that I'm taking from my clients, my corporate clients, that they're seeing, that they're asking for, that they're trying to train their teams on and give that to the next generation of sales professionals. So the ideas that I'll give you today goes directly in line with that. But I'd love to hear from you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Donald C. Kelly. So please make sure let's be friends there if that's cool. But Donald C. Kelly on LinkedIn. And do a connection and not necessarily just a follow. Would really love to talk to you all and chat. Now, one of the things that BJ and we've given before, and I'm going to give it here as a little bonus. If you are using our courseware and you would like to have myself or BJ as a guest lecturer to your school virtually, we'll be more than willing to come virtually to one of your classes. I've been able to do that. It's been awesome, been fun. So let's dive in. 3 things professors must teach the next generation of sales professional. Let me know if you can see the screen. Just go ahead and give me a little bit of a thumbs up. Give me some emoji there. Oh yeah, look at this, getting all excited. Now, I also want to get from you all. I understand some of you, I saw some of you are from all over the different, all over the world here in North America. Go ahead and just give me also the city where you're hailing from as well. Sorry, the university you represent. We know some of your cities, but the universities. So while you're doing that, let me just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about tools, the right tools to include in your sales tech stack. So many of us right now are teaching students, and we know, obviously we want to make sure we can help them to be most effective possible. I'm not going to be able to go, I'm not going to go deep into every single sales tool. I'm going to give you some, though, that I do believe and that I use and my BDRs, my sales team use on a day-to-day basis. and also the clients that we work with use on a day-to-day basis, and how you could take advantage of them. And I'll show you tell you how we're utilizing this in the courseware, in my classroom with the students that I'm working with. So the first one, we'll go over that. Second one, we're going to talk about how to take advantage of AI in the to break through the noise. Prospecting. No matter what level of sales reps you're teaching, whether they're account executives or they're pharmaceutical sales reps or they're BDRs, which a lot of them are going to fall into a BDR position when they leave a university, they're going to need to break through the noise. Prospecting, HubSpot have done stats on this, and it's one of the ones that come back over and over that salespeople just say it's really difficult for us to do. I was at HubSpot event where I was speaking 2 weeks ago at Inbound, and I was also at Salesforce event Dreamforce last week, as a speaker and as representing their trailblazers, one of their influencers. And the things that we're getting that they're sharing around artificial intelligence are really phenomenal in a lot of these tools. And unfortunately, we're not going to have access to a lot of those capabilities. However, the principles that I'm going to teach you about artificial intelligence that you can help your students understand will be critical to helping them move forward. And then the final area, we're going to talk about strategies to effectively encourage accountability. Now, I'm going to talk about it from two perspectives, from the accountability side for the sales rep or your student, and then also how students can help their clients when it comes to accountability. So if that sounds good, if you like that so far, just give me some clap, give me some good news, some excitement. I like excitement. I like the interaction. When I'm doing keynotes, it's pretty cool to get that feedback, but I can't get that from you in this virtual setting. So let's go real quick. The first one is Apollo.io. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Apollo.io. If you have, again, give a thumbs up. And I'll tell you why Apollo is so powerful. There are different tools out there, and you can use, like, there's Outreach, or HubSpot has their sequence and capability as well. In our textbook, course where we go deeper into this as well, and you'll find that in some of the arenas that you're a part of. When we reach out to a prospect, the average outreach should be for a cold outreach, it's about 6 to 12 touches that you need to have. And sometimes we're seeing that extended beyond those 12 touches that you need to do in order to be able to grab somebody's attention. Since the pandemic, we shared the stat over and over. LinkedIn said that the data that they have that it got from Gartner said that email outreach went up by 50%, engagement or reply rates decreased by 30%. So again, more and more people get more emails. They're not necessarily responding to those emails. We need to make sure that we're doing things that's going to be impactful, that's going to grab their attention. Now, your sales reps, they're not going to be able to remember to just send out all of those just different emails. This is why you have tools like Apollo, where it's an engagement platform. It allows that individual to be able to set up their sequences. When you are sending out a sales rep into the workforce, you need to make sure they understand sequences, not necessarily just the tools. Be tools agnostic. You can use Apollo, use whatever. We don't care. The thing, though, is that those sales reps need to be able to know how to grab attention from the top. Whether that's through LinkedIn as a top of the funnel outreach, whether that's through their phone or email or whatnot. How do you go about doing that? And sequencing and creating great sequences are critical. You must understand the theory behind this, because the prospects that you're reaching out to, not all of your sequences or your email outreach are going to be the same. So if I'm reaching out to, say, a VP of marketing, the way that I reach out to a VP of marketing and the things that maybe matter to a VP of marketing that's maybe a baby boomer is going to be totally different than a way that I'm going to reach out to somebody who's a millennial or even a Gen Z. And we're seeing a lot more Gen Zs who are getting into the business world, and they have influential stake where they may be bringing stuff to their manager who may be a millennial and giving them insights or giving them influence. And if that's the case, we need to make sure that we're reaching out and targeting those individuals in appropriate ways. So if we're sending out some of those lame, just like, straight plain outreach sequence where it's the same exact sequence for everyone, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. Way we like to start off our outreach sequence in our team and also with our clients, we use LinkedIn, and we'll show you some ideas and how this works in a real life situation here as well. And if you have questions, go ahead and drop the questions down in the chat below. But I would just want to give you, I'm bringing you out in the wild now. So I'll bring you to LinkedIn, for instance. When I use Apollo, it integrates to or any of these platforms. You can use them to integrate to your LinkedIn. But what I typically do, especially teaching a BDR, I love to use Navigator. And this is a real list that I built for this week for one of our outreach sequences. The cool thing about LinkedIn is that it gives us the opportunity. And again, you want to make sure your students can understand this. They want to grab people's attention on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a new component in their software that allows for you as an individual, if you're searching for new leads, that you can focus based on certain triggers. So one of the triggers that we like to look for are people who have changed jobs and people who are posting on LinkedIn recently. Then you can go over here and put some of the different things in, the size of the company and so forth. What happens now is that as a sales rep, if you're teaching your sales reps this, they can look for creative ways to be able to grab the prospect's attention from LinkedIn. So when we send a connection request now to say Ryan, we have some things that we can see. Ryan is new to his position, so I can probably start a conversation around that. We have connections, and also he's recently posted on LinkedIn, so I can look at his posts, see what was on those posts, and if there's something that's engaging, I can use that again to grab his attention from the top. Now, why does this all work? How does this all work now? There's a concept that is floating around in the sales arena right now. It's called show me you know me. Show me you know me. Show me you know me. So go back to what I said about emails, right? A lot of the emails that we're sending out are not getting replied because they're just blank. They're just blah, just another sales email. But now when I look at my personal inbox, I look and see who can I eliminate first. People that I don't know, things that maybe look like spammy or things that it's not relevant to me. And I delete that first. And then I go back in and I see all the people that I know. So those people, again, show me you know me. They may be friends, colleagues, potential their clients or whatnot, or team members. So if you think about that from LinkedIn standpoint, if I just send an email to a prospect just because I'm just sending out a lot of automation and sending out an email, I'm going to find myself in trouble. But if you're teaching your sales reps that they need to customize and they need to focus on the role of the individual and look for triggers as you're reaching out to these prospects, it increases the chance. So now I build this campaign around people. Again, they're new to their jobs. So what are some of the challenges? And we'll talk about this in point number 2, how we can use artificial intelligence. What are some of the biggest challenges of facing the individual or that are facing individual sales reps right now? What are some of the biggest challenges facing these marketing directors that I may be reaching out to right now that are new in their role? And also, obviously, they're posting on a platform. So I personal connection with them. And then after that, they accept my connection request. And then I send my email. My email is focused specifically on the challenges facing that director of marketing, the role. It may not be fully customized to knowing their dog, but my email sequence that I built now through Outreach or Apollo, one of these sequencing platform, it allows me to be able to get that higher chance of being open again, because 1, I've connected with that person previously on LinkedIn. 2, my subject line is being tweaked just a little bit. The first email, where I might tie back to whatever my connection request was. So let me give you an example. I might see that so-and-so is in Miami, and I might say, can you settle a debate for me? I'm reaching out to, let's say, Ryan here. Ryan, can you help me settle a debate? Where in the which one of these 2 spots you can find the best Cuban restaurant in Miami? Now, the reason why I would do that is because Cuban food is like top in Miami, and I can go on Google and maybe find 2 top restaurants. This is going to prompt Ryan to respond to me, accept my connection request. Now my first email to him, I might change my subject line to say something to the nature of the best Cuban restaurant, thank you, or thanks for the Cuban recommendation. And then my email will go in and say, hey Ryan, it's Donald, we connected on LinkedIn, you gave some insights to me about best Cuban restaurant and you helped settle that debate. I'm curious though, I noticed that your team's growing and that you guys, and this is where my value prop will come in, I bridge that gap. I noticed that you get your team's growing, and a lot of times when we, new leaders who are growing teams are concerned about blankety blank, blankety blank, blankety blank. Is this something that you'd be open to talking about? Again, most people will not have that level of connection at the top because they don't do a show me you know me. So again, if you're setting up an email sequence or you're setting up an outreach sequence with a tool like Apollo, it's imperative that you make sure you can help your students to start off first, look for a way that they can build that connection, and then they can bridge that gap over to it. But again, there's so many of them. What I do with mine is you can see Apollo integrated here to my LinkedIn. So if I were to get these people, I can go ahead and collect them real quick, and I can add them to a list in Apollo, and then I can go into a particular sequence that I have because that's integrated to my LinkedIn. how do I teach this to my students? This semester is the first year we're doing this. My job is to help my students to be able to land a good job so they can know their stuff, or a good internship. A lot of them are sophomore and juniors at this point, and I want to help prepare them for the future, right? And that's the biggest thing that I can do is part this knowledge to them in the sales capacity. So one of the ways that I do this is this semester, their job is to connect with one of the assignments that we're doing. They're going to use Apollo. There's a free version they can use, and LinkedIn, and they're going to reach out to potential employers or potential internships that they can get, and that's going to be a part of their whole thing. We're going to create sequences around that, and we're going to start by connecting with people on LinkedIn every single day. Every single week, they have an assignment that they need to connect with a personal outreach to 10 people on LinkedIn. And now one of the tools we're going to give you is a way that you can create a cadence, and you can find that there that we use in the textbook. So anyways, so hopefully that gives you an idea. But if you're going to help these students, if one of the first things you need to do is to teach them how to take advantage of tools like this, like Apollo, so they can create sequence. We also talked about Sales Navigator again, and the benefit of that. Now, some of you may be able to have a license to that, and you can check with LinkedIn to see if they have educator capabilities. I use one for my business, so I'm able to demonstrate it to my students. But it's another powerful tool if you're going to help these students, because again, when they get out into the game and they're going and doing outreach, we need to make sure that they're understanding of the things they're going to take advantage of. No matter what company they work with, LinkedIn is going to be a critical component when it comes to social selling. And if it's the same idea, unless they're doing B2C, and the same concept when it comes towards engagement tools, again, you can use Apollo or whatnot, but teach them, or SalesLoft is another one. You can teach them whatever tool you want, but help them to understand sequences from the jump. Number 2, I go a little bit fast, so if you have questions, go ahead and drop the questions in the chat, and I'll be able to make sure to answer those as well. But how to take advantage of artificial intelligence. So let's go back to what we just talked about there. Like, say my students now, they're reaching out to, maybe one of them is reaching out to I don't know, a sales director or a marketing director, and they're trying to figure out what's meaningful to them right now. The biggest thing that you can, one of the biggest things that you can do when it comes to doing an outreach is focus on things that matter to me and not to you. So with our students, and we're teaching them how they can reach out to some of these companies and to land appointments and to talk about, sell themselves, so to quote unquote, for an internship or a job, we're not going to tell them to send an email and say, hey, my name is Brad, and this is what I can do, or I'm Shanika, and this is what I can do. What we want to do is focus on what matters most to those individuals right now. So you can utilize artificial intelligence for that. Salesforce, they called their conference Dreamforce last week the biggest artificial intelligence event in the world, and they had like 40,000 people, and everything they're talking about is around AI. Now, some of you might be saying, well, man, like, are we going to lose students to jobs to AI? And at HubSpot event, the CEO, one of the founders of HubSpot, he said yes, and he's not blank, and he's like, yes, people are gonna lose jobs to artificial intelligence. However, they're going to gain jobs because of artificial intelligence. And a lot of people have some adage right now say people are going to lose jobs because artificial intelligence, to people who are using artificial intelligence. And yes, it's cute and it's a nice little statement. There's some truth to that. And with it, though, what I'm seeing is that it advances the capability of other positions that open. So even like with HubSpot, with Salesforce events last week as well, one area that they were talking about was how like some of the mundane things that the sales reps do right now will be able to be alleviated because of artificial intelligence, and how that can help the individual seller to perform more be more effective in their role. Now, Gartner did a study as well in which they looked at more buyers right now want to have a seller-free environment, but they also have an interesting thing tied to that study that and I have to find that and give it back and give it to you all. But one of the things that they pointed out was around a lot of the people who did say they want a seller-free environment had buyer remorse afterwards. Well, a third of them actually had a buyer remorse where they're like, oh man, I wish I did work with a sales rep. So the key that we're coming back to, whether it's with artificial intelligence and with the behavior now of buyers, is that buyers don't necessarily want to deal with order takers. Buyers want to deal with people who can help them solve problems, and that's the consultants. hopefully that bridge that gap there. So as you're teaching the sales rep, one of the things I try to go look at is like, I look at some of the McKinsey and KPMG and these analysts and say, how can I help my seller to start thinking like that type of analyst? How can I get her when she's meeting with her prospect to be seen as somebody so valuable that a buyer is like, of course I want to work with this person. And that's one way you can help. And that's where artificial intelligence come in. So right now, my team and I, we use chat, and I tell my students to take advantage of chat GPT. And some of that may be controversial thing for some of you, but I'm like, it's kind of like telling students back in the days, don't use the internet. It's like, come on, bro, I'm going to use Ask Jeeves. That's what I was doing back then. So you're going to use the internet. But the thing that if you just having simple assignments where it says going, that the AI can do for them, that's lame. But if you can help them to be able to start thinking, they can use the insights and to be able to get data and to be able to think like as an analyst, they can definitely take advantage of artificial intelligence that can help them to do so. So with my role, and I know chat right now is up to September 2001, but however, the roles that we're seeing don't necessarily change. So let me say I'm reaching out, doing an ad camp or outreach campaign to a VP of sales. I'm not going to look at the VP of sales and say, well, what can I send a basic email to? How can I send a basic email to this VP of sales? I'm going to say, ask chat, what are the challenges that most VP of sales have within the first 6 months of going into a pharmaceutical industry or into the manufacturing space? By giving it the more complex or the more detail, it's going to come back with some insights and helpful information. This again is going to allow me to be an analyst. I might look at what are the top metrics that impacts a VP of sales. So again, maybe or a VP of marketing, and if I sell a HR, a CRM, I can use that insights in crafting a message that will be able to tie to them. And my message won't be tone deaf anymore because it's really focusing on some of the challenges. And I'm letting AI do the research and do all of that work for me. Again, I'm seen as an analyst and somebody that may be able to stand out a little bit more because I've grabbed their attention, one, from social, but then two, I sound like somebody that has business competency and business acumen that's going to help them to be able to really want to have that conversation or accept my an invitation to talk about our value proposition. So I'm able to bridge the value proposition with a problem that they have or a unique problem that they have because, again, I was able to get that information from AI. I've been rapping there for a little bit. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop the questions. If this stuff is making sense so far, I just want you to give me a thumbs up. All right. There we go. How much do you teach finding voice? I'm going to talk about that one here. Soft skills and mastering conversation, like activities listening. Oh, we talk about that a lot. Oh my goodness, I love this. Brad, I'm literally going to Canada. I'm supposed to be going to Canada in like in 2 weeks to teach that to a sales team actually, about storytelling and how we utilize that. We use this heavily in our training, and a lot of our training that we do to these corporate clients is how we structured this courseware that these students are using. So they're getting stuff that a Fortune 500 company would be taking advantage of. But those things, those soft skills are absolutely important. And that's where it comes through, like with the Simternship. And we do this specifically in our class. I love role plays. So yeah, they have the Simternship that they're doing some role plays with, but in class. And some of the things we're looking at is just that. Tonality is the expression, the way that they ask questions. We love the 5 why concept, going deeper and getting to the root cause or root pain behind an issue. We did one of the best activities that we do in our class every semester is we have them sell water. So being in South Florida, water is kind of like a thing, right? But I have my students, and water is such a plain thing, but we have our students sell us water. So everything that I shared with you so far in this role play, it's our in-class sales competition, and I give winners, I pay for it myself. I give them some Amazon dollars, money to the winning team. But the thing about it, go back to what you're saying about finding your voice. I like I like to have them not only look at how the value is, but we also evaluate them on how they did with those soft skills. How did they convey themselves? I did debate in high school, so my debate coach used to always say, it's not what you say, but how you say it. That helps with that. So yeah, we talk about that. So how much do you teach? We teach it. We teach it in everything. So we teach them the skills, and then we infuse those soft skills in it because that's where the money comes in, right? So that's so AI. So how do we use it? Yeah, you can take advantage of simple, utilize the easiest one is Chat GPT that you could take advantage of. You can utilize chat, and there's different tools out there you can utilize to help your students. But again, I'm not teaching them just to use this to write an email. We don't do that. We teach in the program in our courseware how to structure an effective email, and but in that we want to be able to help them get insights that can help beef up that email that they may structure, if that makes sense. AI doesn't necessarily have my or exactly the exact email content or structure. They have different formats that it can utilize. However, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for the content and the how do they sound like an analyst, and if they're when they're talking on the phone, or if they're doing a role play, or if they're sending an outreach or doing a voice message on LinkedIn, how do they sound in that scenario, that to help bring convey value. But yeah, you can see it. I'm a heavy user of Chat GPT. It's very effective. The last area, I think we have 30 minutes, right, Scott, Paul? You could jump in and just give me some thumbs up. Let me know. I can go on for like 2 hours with this stuff. But let me know how much time I have left, Paul. But the last area is strategies for effective to effectively encourage accountability. Now, we talk about this when you have the sales rep. One area that we find when they come into the business world is that we need people that are going to be they need to be accountable, right? If we are not giving them an opportunity to have that level of accountability, then we find ourselves, we're maybe coaching them in the wrong way, or setting up for bad behavior. But with that, even my class, my first semester, and some of you all are professors. I'm a sales guy and run a sales organization and teach sales teams all across the globe that so happens to teach students as well. And one of the things that I found in that was my first semester, I gave them a lot of leniency. I'm like, man, I want you guys to understand the stuff. And then I realized the detriment, the problem that I started, because people were turning in late work and we were accepted. And my poor TA at the time was like, come on, Donald, like we need to make sure we have some structure here. And I realized in my sales game and with my team and with the people that I work with, we do have that structure. We do have those things that are implemented. And if I'm going to prep these students, we must do that. I've lost deals because I didn't turn in a proposal on time, or I didn't reply to an email and effectively in the order, and didn't do what I said I was going to do. And in those situations, the buyer's not like, well, I'm still going to give you some of the money and give some to the other client as a company as well. It's like, no, you lost the opportunity. Like, God bless you. See you later. Like this is the real world. So I told them, like, we give them ample time to do their work. So, and I'm explaining how I implement this accountability. So you have the first day, things happen. I know you could turn in an assignment, and if you turn it in late, one day late, it's 50% of the points. And anytime after that, just can keep it and do it as an exercise, because we're not accepting it afterwards. So again, I'm a little bit more straightforward with that. But I saw an uptick where people were turning in assignments, and all of a sudden they were planning and they were organizing and they were doing stuff better. They were doing things in a better. Stukent told me I'm done at 1:45. So we're going to have some Q&A that we'll go into with this. So start prepping your Q&A for the last 15 minutes. I want to make sure I can focus on your stuff and answer questions that you all have in this time period. So with that accountability, I pushed this so that my students, now they were turning in their assignments on time and so forth. Now, in the business world, one of the things that I do with my team is that every morning with our sales team, we have a sales team lead, we do a 15-minute huddle. Now, this is not to be big brother and to be over them and to say, are you doing your stuff? These are for where we look at trends. We see some of the habits or some of the areas that they may need some additional training or whatnot. And we take that load of that 15 minutes every morning, and we focus on one particular challenge, one particular area, and we go deep and we analyze. So the whole sales team is on this. We're not looking at, this is my numbers and this is what I closed. Like, that's lame. We don't want that. What we want to look at is, how can we best help this individual seller to perform? And what we do at that point, those calls are designed specifically just for that, where it's helping those calls are designed to help the individual in areas that may be weak for them to perform a little bit better. So that's one way we include accountability. So in our sales team, we have two things that we look at, especially for our BDRs: meaningful outreach, meaningful conversations. Yes, we want appointments, but I can't tell a sales rep to go and shake the appointment tree and an appointment's going to fall out. They have no control over, they have, and that's again maybe an argument here, but they can't just go turn on the appointment faucet and appointments are going to come out into their lap. However, they do have control of how many outreach activities they do and how effective they are at those outreach activity and meaningful conversations to some extent of how they're going about every time they're talking to someone. How can they make that meaningful? When we track these things that have accountability in place with this, we see that our appointments increase and we see that opportunity increase as well as a result of that. From that, and then there's different one-on-ones that you can do, but we totally believe, and we've seen this, and we're a believer, we drink this Kool-Aid in our company, is that we must have account one-on-ones. So one-on-ones with our individual reps, where we go through a one-on-one meeting once a month and find out where they are. This is where we go deeper into their particular numbers and find out where we see trends. And in preparation for those meetings, we record our calls. We use a tool called Just Call, where their calls are recorded, and depending on the country and the states you're in, there are different rules with that. But most of those calls are recorded, and we're able to go back in and listen and to give feedback. Just like football or basketball players watch tape, we listen to those audios and we can give feedback and understand where they may have gaps and individually coach that person to their next level in their capabilities. But this is an example you can see here of what that form looked like. Now, from the client perspective, we need accountability on that side as well. And that's why we use the tools like this. Is called Aligned. Aligned is powerful because what it does, and some of you have heard of this before, in our advanced selling courseware, we talk about this and we demonstrated and outline what's known as a mutual action plan. And some of you sales heads out there, you know about those. But a mutual action plan allow for the buyer to come with from their perspective, what needs to happen in order for this deal to close, and from the seller perspective, what needs to happen in order for this deal to be able to close and for this deal to be able to convert. Now, why is this so critical? 65% data show that 65% of the human population are visual people. 65%. However, in most of the sales situation where we're trying to infuse accountability and infuse action and so forth, we're not helping a buyer to be able to truly see that process in our heads, because we sell this thing over and over on a day-to-day basis. We're thinking, of course, the buyer understands the process. No, visually show them. And then now you can put accountability in place by having the stakeholders identify what needs to happen on their end in order for the deal to progress forward. So I'll give you an example. This is a deal that closed for us recently. It was a pretty sizable deal for our organization, but we use the idea of this mutual action plan. Monday and train their sales team. But in this process, we broke down and we showed them the mutual action plan, the whole process that we outlined together, what was going to happen each particular date and so forth. And then we had the mutual action plan that was infused in there as well. So everybody knew what task they're going to do, when they were going to do that task. But again, my client was able to go in here and see this. I'm able to go in there and see this. Now, why is this so important? If you're not teaching your students this and they're going out if you teach your students this and they go out into the game, they're so much more further ahead than most of their other counterparts. They're understanding the human psychology of how people are visual people and how they want to see things, as well as they're understanding how to take advantage of tools to be able to help not only infuse accountability, but also be able to speed up the sales process so the deals can be able to convert at a higher rate with that. Those are the top three things. I mean, we can go on for like days about more things, but I would tell you from the very, very jump, if you're trying to help these students to get to the next level, the biggest thing that I'll tell you right now that every professor must be doing, help them to understand the tools, help them to see some of the right tools that are out there, some of the tools they can take advantage of that's going to help them to perform well and how they can utilize that. Help them take advantage of AI, not necessarily as being order takers. We want them to become those consultants, those like KPMG or like some of these, these analysts that goes into an organization. I don't care what people say. A lot of those analysts, they're salespeople, but they don't realize it. per se. And then strategies for to effectively infuse accountability. Look for ways in your education. How can I help this student to become more accountable, and in that process? And if you could do that, we're going to see magic. We're going to prepare these students. They're going to land amazing jobs, and they're going to come back and help and bring other students into those companies and those organizations as well. And we're going to help you to be able to help them make the world a better place. So I'm here to answer some of these questions that may come up. I see one from Warren. If you have any other questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those as well. But Warren asked, I would love to have Donald visit my students. How do I make that happen? All right. Yeah, go ahead and Warren, just go ahead and send me an email, donald@thesalesevangelist.com, donald@thesalesevangelist.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn and do that. Paul, you there? Make sure I can answer some of these questions.
Yes, I'm here. You do such a good job of answering people's questions during the event. We do have a couple here for you. You mentioned a little about a sales competition that you have your students do in class. Could you talk a bit more about that? And are there any other competitions that you have your students participate in?
So the university, Brigham Young University, Idaho, they started doing their own. Since I'm remote, I teach not an online class, it's a remote class. So they participate live via Zoom. I don't get a chance to participate in a lot of those on site. However, with my students, it's just one thing. When we start getting into creating value in the courseware, the chapters around that, I help them to use a plain Jane product like water. And we do a we do a company. It's my company, and we say we're here in South Florida. We have a small team here. A lot of our folks are remote, but I say we have a 200 person company. We're in South Florida. My team are complaining about water, and they're meeting with us to talk about that. As a sales rep, what would you do? How would you do an outreach to us about selling the value of your water company? And what we want to do again with that is we help them to identify. And one of the things we look at is how much is the value tailored towards towards the individual they're reaching out to. So an executive, and I tell them, like, for me, I grew up with the water here or whatnot, and I bring my own water and I drink water. So it's not necessarily the water that's a problem for the CEO. And then a student, it's funny how the students start thinking like analysts. So they start to think, well, what matters to a CEO? Productivity, revenue, and the performance of their team. What is the revenue? And then so they start creating these value propositions around not water, but about what water can do for them. And it's just like remarkable what they can come up with when we start teaching them in that way. So that water competition, we have them all do a pitch. And then they have some criteria that they judge on. They help rank each other's as well. And then my TA and I also have a rubric that we look at as well. And then I ultimately have trump card on it that I'm able to help identify which, if I was out there in the wild and I'm getting this email, which one would really grab my attention. So they do video emails, and they do, as if they're meeting with us and expressing the value as well, and whatnot. And the things that they go to, the level and extent that they start to do, it just makes it fun. And we do this over like 2 class periods.
That's great. Another question is, coming from industry, what have you noticed is the most challenging things for students to learn that would really set them up for success? And then how do you address that in the classroom?
The most challenging thing for a student to accept or to learn, you say?
Yeah, that will set them up for success.
Okay. I would probably say the thing that most challenging thing, I'd probably say rejection is oftentimes, because people look at rejection wrong, and especially as a brand new BDR, we find that some of them are afraid of that, even though they have sales competitions and so forth. They and going toe to toe with an executive, sometimes they feel like, I'm fresh out of college, I'm fresh out of school. How can I send an email to a COO that's going to help grab their attention when I don't know anything? Well, what I try to help convey to them is, yes, people are going to say no. You're going to find rejection. Rejection is going to happen. It's just a given. That's just the name of the game, right? However, don't let that deter you, because it's not that they're rejecting you, they're rejecting a salesperson that's reaching out to them when they're going into a meeting, or that email, or maybe that LinkedIn connection request. It's not necessarily picking on you. They don't know you from Adam or at all. So that's first part. Second part is a moral obligation. We try to help them understand that your job, no matter what solutions you sell, you should be able to be in a position where you feel strongly about that solution or that service, that you have a moral obligation. Like, I want the people understand how they can fix this. Just like Stukent's and sales reps, they have a moral obligation to help professors know there's a greater way, an easier way to help their students to be able to learn to change the world, right? And if you think about it from when we teach them that component, the third area that we go into with it is the idea that the buyer don't necessarily know as much as they do. So we help empower them. Though this person may be a COO with like 30 years of experience in an industry underneath their belt, they don't necessarily know about CRMs like you do. You've been studying this thing maybe for 3 months or 6 months. Your knowledge in CRM is probably a little bit more as far as how to buy and some of the nuances of CRM than a COO who doesn't necessarily use a CRM, or a marketing director may not use one CRM. You have a knowledge of a little bit more in-depth knowledge of different CRMs that you can not necessarily be an expert in, but you can bring more value to the table, because that's not their thing that they're studying. They're trying to figure out how to be a better marketer at it. But the business problems that can come from a CRM, you have more knowledge on that, or your organization. And when we can help them to understand that and help them come to the table a little bit more confident, not cocky, a little bit more confident in their knowledge and in their the value proposition and the business acumen, we see them, they're able to work past those rejections, and also to feel confident talking to executives and having those kind of conversations.
That's great. Do you have a preference of sales style that you teach your students?
So go back to that. Is that more like the
SPIN or gap?
methodology?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So sorry, I cut you off there, Paul. My bad.
As like SPIN or gap,
Okay.
Challenger.
Yeah. Based on my experience right now, for the past 10 years consulting, working with companies, I don't find any of them. I haven't found any company that utilizes SPIN. So anymore. Even Neil Rackham was recently saying, like, it's outdated, so to speak, in the way that people are buying nowadays. So if I offend anyone, I just speak it like it is. However, what we've seen is, like, we try to give them a knowledge of as much as possible so that they can be able to land, because maybe some company may have that. So we give them an understanding. And I know the last speaker kind of talked about that, the whole idea of the agnostics. But the one that I do kind of like fall a little bit more heavy on is I want to teach them to become more consultative, because no matter what they sell, and again, the clients that I work with, like, right now, like, no matter what industry. I was in Colombia a few weeks ago. Here in the States, I'm going to Canada, like countries, companies across the globe. The biggest thing that I find is that they don't want order takers, straight up. Like, people just don't want order takers. So the best way that I can help them to do so is to become more consultative. And one of the best things, the tools they can use, is Challenger has a great approach with that, where it's not being, and some people get Challenger wrong. They hear it and they're thinking, oh man, it's becoming like a jerk. That's not the point. If anybody's doing that, it's not Challenger. That person was a jerk already. The Challenger idea is that you're challenging the status quo, or you're challenging the norm. Because again, go back to that executive that may have been doing things for 30 years, but they don't necessarily understand the industry changes. They're looking to someone that can come in and share insights. If I'm going in and telling Paul, you're doing that wrong, that's silly. But if I say, Paul tells me, Donald, we're looking to do a lot of cold outreach, I might say to Paul, challenge that idea. Tell me a little bit more about why you choose to do cold outreach. And he tells me his proposition and an idea behind it. Like, have you ever thought about looking at LinkedIn? Here's some data and a reason why, because this allows for people to be able to grab attention a little bit more. So though you want to do some cold outreach, I'd encourage you to look at the strategy of doing warm outreach, and here's how you can do it. Again, I challenge what Paul is assumption, and Paul's going to say, cool, Donald, you know more than I do in that industry. I love that. So you become as a consultant. Another one, you have different methods, like a Sandler method is like price timeless. It teaches them the fundamentals of each of the stage process. So, there's a little bit of elements in that. BANT is a basic one. It's easy to learn. There's MEDIC. as well. But each of these are just different sales methodologies. But I would say if you're going to really help the students to stand out, if they're going to go in as a BDR, they're probably going to use something to the nature of a band/medic in their in a company that they're looking at. Most of the BDRs that I work with in the organizations, that's kind of like what they're doing. And then as they become an account executive, something like a challenger helps them to be able to articulate themselves and have more meaningful discussion and conversations. So
that's great. Great info. This question centers around role playing. So some students, they tend to go to extremes in role playing and they don't create a realistic buying environment. How do you help foster authentic role playing among your students?
This is a really good one, because when you think about those role plays, like, people don't necessarily understand. Like sometimes the students don't necessarily understand because they've never been in those situations. So one of the best ways you can do it, I like the Simternship that allows to have that real world experience, but also in my situation with them is the preparation as much as possible. We bring in guest lecturers into our class, people from industry. Some of these folks that I teach my clients, and some of them have hired students out of my class, which makes me feel really good. But some of these clients that we have and these experts that I get a chance to rub shoulders with in industry, they come into the class and they share insights as well. This helps. But if you're going to do a role play scenario, we try to give them a real life as much as possible. Try to spell out as much of the scenario that they can. It's not going to be perfect. And again, we're not looking for did they use these perfect terms. I want to be able to see if they can understand the concepts when they're doing role plays. Do they understand how to ask those questions? Do they understand how to probe a little bit deeper? Are they using those soft skills that we were talking about earlier? Are they articulating value effectively? But the more insights, and just like with AI, the more we can provide it, the more that we get from it as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Donald. That is all that we have for you today. This has been very insightful. As always, you do an amazing job. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I'm super pumped. And all you folks out there, it's a pleasure. And if you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Great. Bye, Donald.